This is the Last of Us podcast on TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about The Last of Us Episode 8, When We Are in Need.
You know, you really shouldn't be out here all on your own.
From where I'm sitting, you shouldn't be out here on your own.
Fair enough. So, what's your name? It's hard to trust strangers, I know, but I honestly mean you no harm. And for what it's worth, there's room for you in our group, if you want.
You're inviting me to your hunger club? Thanks.
It's true, we're hungry, but we're still here. I'm a decent man, just trying to take care of the people who rely on me.
Welcome back, fellow survivors. This is TV Podcast Industries, and we are covering The Last of Us Episode 8, When We Are in Need. I'm one of your hosts, John.
I'm another of your hosts, Derek. And Chris will be joining us very soon. He's a little bit late for the recording.
Yes.
But we're hoping that he's going to join us in a couple of minutes.
He will join us shortly, for sure.
Yeah.
He's just out foraging for rabbits and deer. Yes.
Yes.
Hopefully he'll come back with a nice, big, juicy piece of venison. Yummy.
I don't know, after this episode, I think I might be turned off venison, but we'll talk about that. We'll save that for the spoiler section of the podcast about what happens in the actual episode. One thing I do want to call out at the beginning of the episode, we talked a couple of weeks ago about the viewership for the show being really, really good. And they've released some more viewership numbers from HBO this week, John.
Excellent stuff.
Yeah. HBO has announced that episode 8, this episode this week, has had 8.1 million live viewers for the episode. That's up about 74% from when the show debuted at the start of the season. So this really is a hell of a lot of people watching the show and tuning in every week.
Definitely. I guess that's just for the US.
That is literally first night viewing, immediately live, let's say, even though it's a drama that's filmed a year ago, but live on HBO. On the night it airs. It's a massive
in the
number.
US.
In the US, yes. And they've also said that it's the top title overall on HBO Max, their streaming service as well, for the 8th consecutive week. It's had over 30 million views across all platforms since the beginning of the series. So lots and lots of viewers of the show.
Good stuff.
I know we're adding to it by watching it 2 or 3 times before recording the podcast as well, John.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, just a reminder of the Last of Us World's End pub quiz question will be up later for episode 8 as well. Please email in your 9 answers at the end of the season to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And for an extra chance to get your hands on The Last of Us Part 1 for PlayStation 5 or PC, you can also rate us over on Apple Podcasts and send us an email with the details.
Excellent. Yeah, only 2 more questions to go. And of course, you can pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com to get all the questions that you might have missed from earlier on in the season, make it a little bit easier for you as well. Pop on over there. There's a little pub quiz section where you can get all the questions there.
Yes, tvpodcastindustries.com/pub quizzes.
I think so. Oh, you're making it difficult there. Just
no.
go to the website, hit the pub quizzes button, and you'll get all the questions. I've made it really easy so I don't have to give out URLs that people might mistype. Because it might be pub quiz, not pub quizzes. I'm not sure. Pop on over to the website.
We really need to know this stuff.
You really need not to throw me under the bus as we start recording the podcast, John.
That's what I'm here for. And then we can eat you. A yummy stew of braised Derek.
This episode has changed, John, I think. Hark, I think I hear our other survivor joining us.
Yes, I believe I hear the dragging of a dead horse behind him as well.
Oof.
Yummy.
Yes, that's my emotional support animal. It's a dead horse.
Ready for the pot.
Wow, John, you have changed. This episode has changed, I think.
Well, hopefully not to the extent where I'll eat anything, including Aunt Gladys. So,
you could just go for the Van Gogh look and just have one ear under the table at all time.
Well, absolutely. dare I say it, Ellie did have her ear to had the ear to the ground.
Yes.
On that one.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're obviously just going to get straight into spoilers. Thanks so much for joining us, fellow survivors. Of course, Chris joining us as well. Say hi, Chris.
Hello.
There we go. That's just so people can distinguish each of our voices, of course. But great to have you back. We hope you're enjoying The Last of Us. We're on the penultimate episode of the show now.
I know. I can't believe
Yes.
it.
Not much to go.
Flown by.
Literally less, but I think just rumor is it's over an hour for the next episode.
No. In fact, announced 42 minutes for the finale.
How the hell are they going to do
Yeah.
this?
They've announced the episode run times a couple of weeks ago for each of the episodes, and they've been accurate for the last two, so I'm presuming it's right for the last episode, 42 minutes. I can see how they could do it in the game. This is a very fast sequence at the end of the game. If you're good at playing it. If you're not good at playing it, this episode could last 4 to 7 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it took you 10.
Yeah, I bet that.
Yeah, I think so. It was a lot of trying to creep around and getting killed repeatedly.
Yes.
Uh,
Yes. Hopefully that doesn't happen to our two main characters next week.
Yeah, let's hope not.
This is where we basically get the live, die, repeat, or was it the Edge of Tomorrow? Kind of, this is the crossover. This is film. Basically, Joel and Ellie dying repeatedly, trying to just get the one day right.
I am telling you, I played this section of the game the other night while John was out, and I died as Ellie about 15 times, and I know this section really well of the game. I knew exactly what was going to happen.
Because you died as many times last time.
Yeah, exactly. And I still died a bunch of times during the section because there's quite a lot of violence happening around Ellie throughout this section. And it's the section again that you play as Ellie, so you're playing kind of as a new character with different skills than you normally are playing throughout the game as Joel. So yeah, it's a fun section to play, and you can't just jump into it. So I took the opportunity and jumped in and died a bunch of times.
Yeah.
Nice. Nice.
Well, at least you then didn't end up in the pot after dying.
Well, exactly. Thankfully, you just restart almost instantly.
Yes. But before we get into our spoiler-filled discussion of this episode, please remember to pop on over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can subscribe on any good or evil podcast player of your choice. You can also send in your feedback, thoughts, observations, comments on every episode of The Last of Us by sending in your email to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com, or you can head on over to our spoiler-filled post over on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries.
Yeah, you'll need to join the group first if you haven't joined yet, but it's really simple to do. Just make sure you answer the questions that's there, because Facebook automatically rejects people who don't answer the question. Yeah, and unfortunately we have, it has automatically rejected a few people over the last couple of weeks for not answering the simple question of what TV show do you watch, basically. So, it's not that difficult. It's not, I promise it's not it's not a big quiz or a maths problem or anything like that. You just have to answer it or else Facebook kick you out.
If Ellie leaves the train station moving 100 miles an hour, and Joel leaves a different train station leaving 100 miles an hour, when will they both kill the bad guy?
What form of transport are they traveling on?
Exactly. Ah, brilliant.
Okay, then let's jump right into this melting pot, shall we, of an episode. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Well, the show, of course, is based on the PlayStation game written by Neil Druckmann and directed by Bruce Straley from game publisher Naughty Dog. The series, of course, executive produced and written by Craig Mazin and Neil Druckmann. This episode was written again by Craig Mazin after last week's episode, written by Neil Druckmann. The episode was directed by Ali Abbasa. He's director from Tehran in Iran and will direct next week's finale as well.
Interesting.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He's got lots of award-winning work over the course of his career so far, but this is his first really big project, really big budget project. I know that they have mentioned that he is very specific about what kind of takes he wants to get and does make his actors act out the scenes multiple times to get the best out of their performances. So,
wow.
So I know these episodes being so, or the show even being so central on character, this is the kind of director you want, having these scenes between two people, and he rings it for all the drama he can, apparently. So,
But
yeah.
I mean, at least two of these scenes are really pushing, at least from my side, pushing the envelope of like okay, I want it to stop now.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, so interesting.
Yes, my favorite line of the week in a really glowing review for this episode was, "It's constantly riveting and makes you want to watch every scene, even when you don't want to."
Yeah, exactly.
So it keeps you just riveted to the screen. So great job from Ali. I'm really intrigued to see what he delivers in the finale next week. And John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with your synopsis for The Last of Us Season 1, Episode 8?
Sure. Following Ellie's attempt to stitch up the wound Joel sustained when they escaped a group of raiders, Ellie goes hunting for food. Ellie shoots and downs a deer for dinner, but before she reaches her quarry, 2 other hunters, David and James, stand in her way. At gunpoint from a suspicious Ellie, David reveals they are from a large group in need of the food. Reluctantly, however, Ellie exchanges half the deer for medicine to help Joel. David dispatches James to the town to retrieve penicillin as he waits with Ellie. While waiting, David explains he has stepped up as a leader of this group, who look to him for spiritual guidance. He believes that everything happens for a reason, explaining to Ellie his town is looking for a man who killed one of their own, a man travelling with a young girl. James returns with the penicillin, which Ellie takes and escapes back to Joel to administer. While David, James, and other members of the town set to hunt for Ellie and Joel, they capture her and are told to find Joel and deliver vengeance. But Joel stealthily takes out the raiders, and the Joel of old interrogates them to discover where Ellie is being held. Ellie wakes up in a cell and, keeping her ear to the ground, realizes that David's group has started eating other humans. David tries to convince her to join him, as like him, he can see the loyalty, resourcefulness, and violence in her, and they could lead this town to much better things. But he gets too close and Ellie breaks his finger, sending him into a rage. Since she won't cooperate, David brings James to butcher her for food, but Ellie bites him, announcing she's infected, and now so is he. As they look for her bite, Ellie kills James and escapes into the town's restaurant. David chases her, and as the restaurant burns around them, he tries to force himself on Ellie, but she gets her hands on his meat cleaver, taking him out. Escaping from her ordeal, Ellie falls into the arms of Joel, who takes her away from the burning building to safety.
There you go. A massively brutal episode of The Last of Us.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, riveted, for sure.
Yeah.
Certainly, you know, what sold this for me, I mean, I think Bella Ramsey is quite frankly phenomenal, because it's, in the end, just about long enough, that's final scene, and I'm sure, you know, we will be getting into it, but because of how she sells her reaction after having done it, because there's a moment where you're like going, before that, at least for me, are they going to stop? You know, the repeated sort of tenderizing of David's head here. Not that you see any of that, but it's just seeing the brutal sort of almost, you know, flight or fight defense of Ellie here. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, really, really great acting from Bella Ramsey here.
Oh.
Absolutely. It's great. Again. Yeah.
For me, I can't wait to see what she does in 5-10 years. Not because she's not an amazing, like, she is top tier now.
Yeah.
But can you imagine when she has even a bit more experience? Like, you're going from gold tier to S tier level kind of actress. And again, reminds me of a Margot Robbie in that for a while we didn't know who Margot Robbie was. And then she exploded with one of the 2 parts, case in point, Harley Quinn, and then suddenly got picked up for all these other parts, including like Babylon and like all of these other way more dramatic pieces, like Amsterdam. And you're like, holy God, yes, give her the part. She can do all of these things. And I think Bella Ramsey showing, with just 2 well-known parts and series, that she has range, and that I think this will take her to the, okay, well, let's start giving you this more and more and more. And unfortunately, she is locked because of her age. from some of like, you can't have a 16-year-old what? Well, you used to say you can't have a 16-year-old wife. In Hollywood films, you can't have a 16-year-old wife.
Funny you should say that, considering the content of this particular episode, Chris.
Exactly.
Yeah, Bella Ramsey's playing a really good job of playing a 14-year-old in this episode. It's really hard to believe that she's 18 now at this stage, you know, because you're seeing her on screen here playing this 14-year-old, and there are times when you really feel how young she is, or how young she's playing in this role. So a long career ahead of her, I'm sure. And yeah, this episode is fantastic. It really does depend on her being as present and as good at this role as she is, you know?
Well,
that's fantastic.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think, you know, you hear a lot about casting and you hear that there are certain scenes that would be given because of how crucial they are. And you just wonder whether this is one of them, because you really need to know that your actor can deliver that.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't just mean the physicalness of it, but it's the emotional look resonance. The emotional resonance on her face as she's doing it and immediately after doing it.
Yeah.
Because and she's done that a few times now. It's the same with Henry taking his own life. Just that sort of outburst of noise from her and the look on her face just fitted that moment really well. It felt actually quite natural. And here, the reaction to what she's just been doing out of pure, you know, retaliation and protection of herself and defense of herself, you know, it shocks her, and you see that in her face, and it's really incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great moment, but in a series of great moments in the episode for Bella Ramsey. Just done a great job in this episode. And I'm sure we'll talk about all of them as we go into our moments from the episode.
Yes, let us get into our top moments from episode 8 of The Last of Us. First off, let's start off with all of us with our smorgasbord opening, which is the opening hunt.
Yeah, we've kind of done this every week so far, because we've talked about the flashbacks pretty much at the start of each episode. Not a huge amount extra to talk about in this opening scene, but it is just about Ellie still on her own, and still no confirmation that Joel will be free and clear of this, even after last week. Where we left last week was that she'd at least tried to stop the bleeding here. That was the best she could possibly do to not give up, based on that memory that she had from Riley telling her that never give up, no matter whether it's 2 minutes or 2 days, you got to keep on fighting. So her version of fighting here is to stop the bleeding as best she can with Joel. So
stitch him up.
Yeah. I mean, you see that the wound is getting infected here, that he is not eating. Well, she's trying to give him, I think it's jerky. So,
it's either that or lambda spread. It's one or the other.
Yeah, it's not lambda spread.
Okay, well, that is jerky.
It's very different. But I mean, you see that. Also, in terms of the opening, it's not just this opening hunt that we see Ellie go on in order to get food and provisions, because I guess they're pretty low. It is also the introduction of the two other people that are central to this episode in David and James. So, you know, again, really interesting. On the face of it, you're going, okay, this is a preacher delivering, you know, a Bible passage, that you hear that they're struggling for food, that rations are low, they're only really able to use rabbits and elk, that, you know, it's starting to dwindle. The winter is hard, and potentially his flock are losing faith in him. And, you know, you just have that moment just before it switches back to Joel and Ellie, where you have David saying to James, seemingly his right-hand man here, do you still believe in me? You know, and it's kind of interesting, because given the religious overtones with the Bible reading, you're thinking about, do you believe in me around the faith of God and the Bible passage? But actually, you know, as this episode begins to progress, you get the sense that they have only just started on using humans to cover for the scarcity of rabbit and elk for this large group.
Yeah.
Presumably, it involves one of the dead people from the episode previously at Colorado University. Possibly could be one of the fallen raiders that we saw.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So, you see that there's a, due to necessity, desperation, they've gone down a route here. But only as the story unfolds during the course of the episode. Here, it feels much like he's losing faith in God, in David as a leader.
Or are the two one and the same? Is David thinking that he's God and James is losing faith in him? That's something that we definitely get as the episode comes on. I really want to hear what your thoughts are on this, Chris, because obviously this is all new to you. This is a storyline that you wouldn't have gotten to in the game, and we're getting more information about it here. We certainly get more from the show about who David and his people are. You get kind of nods to it and hints towards it in the game, but what did you think of this setup at the opening scenes of the episode?
Yeah, because my main point is the human menu, so I'm going to set that aside. The setup for me in terms of who... Well, first of all, hold on. James. Troy Baker.
Yes.
Finally we get Troy Baker, the OG Joel, the voice of Joel from the games in the show, and oh my god, I love James. I love Troy Baker.
Uh-huh.
Like, I have such just amazing actor, what he does, and just kind of delivers in this. Interestingly enough, he's from a very traditional religious family, we'll call it that, and group and area and town. So I would say as a actor, this would have been tough for him because he rejected all that and kind of became who he became. So I'd say going back and acting as a very religious man to an iconic pastor type guy would have been tough, but hats off, just absolutely love him for that.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely love Troy Baker. And if you've been listening to the official podcast, he is the host of the official podcast for the show as well. And I know he talks about how impressed he is that they allowed him to come on board after being the voice actor and the performance actor for Joel. Coming on board for the show is a massive dream for him to be involved. And he did a great job as this right-hand man. He does stand out amongst everybody that's around him. I may not leave this in, but there's a great meme going around that I really enjoyed, which was all across America, millions of non-gamers have their partners turning around to them tonight going, "That's the voice of Joel from the game. Pray for them." Absolutely love that. Really good joke.
I did that. I literally did that.
Derek did it to me. I was like, I know.
There's Troy.
I absolutely loved him being there and then getting this introduction to this group, which is there's always going to be one. Religion plays such a huge part in the human world. No matter what your religion is, religion as a part of society plays a huge part. So no matter what post-apocalyptic scenario you get placed in, there's always going to be a religious faction or a section or storyline, usually, unless they decide not to investigate. But any of the big ones have always added in some form of a religious person or some form of religion. Typically, because they are more American-focused shows or films, there is an American pastor taking control and type. So that's that storyline. As soon as I saw the religious aspect of it, I'm like, oh no, this is not good. Because you're trained in current cultural TV norms that level of
devotion,
let's call it that, religiousness, zealousness.
Okay.
Yes.
That being such a zealot to that type of old school, Old Testament style typically is in a storyline bad. It's like, oh, that they're hiding something. They're a bad person because they are it's in the Ten Commandments: do not covet false idols. Yet sometimes these kind of pastors or central clergymen become the very thing, the very idol that they ask not to. And you get a scene like that later where a little girl kind of stands up and says, kill these two, and David slaps her down and I'm your father. Very much you're questioning, well, no, you're not. Her father's dead. Oh, you mean in that way. And it's, in that way, I mean the religious kind of holy way. Later on, we get that whole other bit, and we'll get to that later. There's a layer and an onion to all of this.
Absolutely. And that little girl, of course, is Hannah from the opening sequence, who has lost her father recently, completely inconsolable about it, and being told we won't be having a funeral for him until we get through the winter because we can't dig up the frosty ground. And what is really happening is they've taken his body, and that's what's going to be feeding the townspeople from now on. So yes, there's loads of layers in here. I do want to stick a little pin in the religion question, because I want to talk about that in the David point, because we actually learned something really key to the religion piece later on, which I find really interesting, and it flips everything on its head. But what I really like about this is we're seeing different types of societies, as we have throughout the show. The show is all about how people have survived 20 years on from the apocalypse. And we've seen a massive city that's been completely overthrown from the control of Fedra. We've seen Fedra in control of another city where Joel and Tess started out. We've seen Jamestown, which was in control of a community group that seems to be working quite well. And now we're seeing a city that is under the control of someone that is preaching from the Bible and trying to teach the same lessons that were being taught 20 years before the apocalypse. So I like that they're taking these types of communities, which will pop up if everything suddenly went to crap tomorrow. These types of communities would be exactly the type of communities that would pop up. And what I do specifically love about this is I think Ellie probably calls out the way I would see this. Hang on a second. The world ended 20 years ago. Why the hell are you following God? Nobody believes in God anymore, but David has stepped up and become this religious leader for the group, because that's what they all need to get them through these tough times.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think we said it before. It's the fact that when that large society dismantles because of this apocalypse, it's the tribe becomes smaller, and so therefore more varied in terms of how it's going to get run. I like how they're showing that. I think as well, what makes this, I think, a bit different from the norm of it's the religious group. It's the inconsistency of their leader, the one purportedly to preach this message of the gospel, you know? And in that sense, Scott Shepherd is really good. But then
Scott Shepherd is fantastic as David Huth. So really good. From the first moment, you're not sure whether you can trust him, because you're not supposed to. He's a stranger, of course, but he's saying all the right things, and he's kind of being playful and having really good conversation with Ellie. Seems really, really knowledgeable, and the way he kind of drip feeds out why you don't trust this person is fantastic throughout the episode.
So I think in this opening, it's really good how they move from this new couple, effectively, of David and James back to Joel and Ellie and their various predicaments, and you get the moment where David and James find that deer that Ellie has shot, and you just get the meeting of these two groups by proxy through, over this dead deer. Ellie maintains a kind of flippant sort of approach just with calling James Buddy Boy, which I kind of really like. She's in a sense the one in control here by having the gun on them. So it's just that meeting. I guess it's almost like Cortez coming to the Aztecs, or it's indigenous first peoples first meeting Europeans. It's trying to figure them out, and at Ellie's heart there is suspicion for sure.
Absolutely. Did you notice that she did the Star-Lord thing when Star-Lord meets Thor, where she lowered her voice? when talking to them for the first time, and she's like, hang on a second, put your guns down. And you can tell it's a different voice than we've heard from Ellie for the last couple of episodes. So she is thinking, I need to make myself look bigger and appear stronger than they'll see when they see a 14-year-old girl with a hunting rifle. Yeah. So she's trying to do everything she possibly can in her power to be in control of that situation. But a great opening to the episode, setting up this really tense beginning. What's going to happen when Ellie all alone is meeting a brand new group of people who are really desperate, as we see there are at the start of the episode.
Yeah, good stuff. Let us move on to our next top moment. Chris, what's your top moment from the episode?
I'm going to bring with this moment a bottle of Chianti and serve it rare. Just kind of a nice sear kind of on both sides. Medium. If some people might like it medium, but definitely not well done. I want to talk about the human menu. Because this was, I always expect some variation of this.
Okay.
Because humans are terrible. But humans are survivors. So seeing this, I wasn't expecting it though. Like in this show, I thought this was just going to be a religious fanatics type storyline.
Yeah.
And then when you do see, it is slowly revealed because it becomes very obvious at a point. Obviously, the ear on the ground.
Yes.
But you're kind of, there's enough hints and trickle of just kind of information that it's just like you mentioned, like, we're not going to put the body in the ground because it's too solid. And you're like, that's a bit, okay.
Maybe. I understand it.
Sure.
Yeah, I understand it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then as it adds up and builds, you're like, oh no, there's too much here.
Yeah.
And then even with Ellie in the cage, you're like, okay, maybe the storyline is he's just a bad guy, and the reason we'll get into later. And then you get the ear, and you're like, oh. So, like, because there's the guy, one of the townspeople coming out and goes, what's the meat? And it's like, it's deer. And you're like, oh yeah, because they got the deer. But then they bring the deer, they only arrive in after then with that deer.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and I was wondering about whether you would have guessed it from watching the show for the first time, that this is what's happening with the group. Because you're right, you could easily be thinking, religious group, oh, she's immune to the virus, they're going to have some big problem with this, they're going to call her a witch and burn her at the stake, or do something because she's completely unusual for not having the virus. Maybe that's what's going to happen. That's why there's fear here. And I do think they hide it well enough, unless you know the story, that you probably won't know that they're going to be cannibals here, especially because only 4 people in the town know that they're cannibals. This is hidden from everybody else. There is a really good moment though. David's only told 4 people, in the town. Everybody else thinks they are eating venison. There is a really good moment though. I think it almost comes across as comedy if you know that they're eating human meat, when David and James arrive back, as they open the door, holding the deer, really happy with themselves that they've got the deer. You see everybody stopping eating and looking at them as if only it arrived 25 minutes earlier, we wouldn't have to eat Fred. It just comes across as a little bit of a comedy moment, but really the reason why they're stopping is because James has told them all that the reason they have this deer is because they've met possibly the girl who was with the guy that killed a member of their community.
Yeah. I think as well, like, the take I really liked about this is that, in a sense, this is going to sound a bit weird, is that they're starting their journey on cannibalism.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, it's not like the full throttle sort of cannibals, going for Joel and Ellie for that reason. There is the other reason that Alec, one of their own, was killed by Joel. Mm-hmm. But it's also the willingness for David to potentially bring Ellie into the group. Mm-hmm. So, and every step to prevent the others from killing her, So I like that it's this initial journey, that there's only 4 people.
Yeah.
That there's, some knowing glances at mealtime. Which I just thought was really kind of just a little bit different. They're not full-blown cannibals. At least they don't even know that's happening.
Exactly.
It's an executive decision that's been done. And it links back to, as I say, by the end of the episode, that "do you still believe in me?" is probably, have we gone down the right course here? And he does, because otherwise they starve, so. Yeah. I mean, it's like the plane crash where they're stranded, like the film Alive, where, in a sense, to survive, they have to then do the unthinkable. Yeah. And it feels like they're at that moment, and maybe that's why he's withholding it, so that, come summer, who knows? They go back to veggies and start rearing chickens or whatever, but
you'd presume so. Yeah,
it just adds that slight difference to the sort of just general cannibal story.
Absolutely, and I would argue that is the massive difference, is that David has told 4 people and nobody else in the town knows what's happening here. So you bring up a really good example. Alive, true story, actually happened, that in order to survive, they had to make this desperate choice. Here, there's no choice being given to the people that are following David as their leader. It seems like, given that Joel finds a number of bodies at the end of the episode, it seems like he's choosing people to take out and feed to the rest of the people, saying they're dying because of hunger or dying because of the awful conditions, and feeding them to them. That's what it seems.
There's a woman. Yeah. There's a woman in the one of the bodies. There's a woman.
Yeah.
We never hear about a woman being as part of the raiding group that was taken out.
No, I mean, he says 4 people went scavenging, 3 returned.
And we saw the 4 of them in that episode, all 4 men. We know the one that Joel killed was Alec. So there's another 3 bodies there waiting to be delivered to the town, and they have no choice in this situation. I think that's the really big thing. I'm not justifying cannibalism in any way at all.
No, absolutely.
But the really big difference in this story to a cannibal story is that half of this town doesn't even know themselves. Most of this town doesn't even know themselves.
No, exactly. Yeah. And it's also that insight into David as their leader.
Exactly.
Is on the, you could say, is he trying to protect them from the awful truth of what they're eating, what they're doing? And so, come summer, it's back to a regular diet, or does this take him down the darker path? Or is it that, well, he hasn't made that choice public to his flock?
Yeah, and I think part of the pushback that he gets from James when he goes and picks up Ellie and brings her back to the town, part of the pushback that he gets from James, remember the words that James says are, "What are you doing? That's just another mouth to feed," is how he describes Ellie, yeah? What we know is, because of all the mouths that David has to feed, look at the decisions he's made. And James is going, hang on a second, don't bring another person into this situation that has just gone completely off the rails. David even describes that himself. Look what happened to me when I'm the person that has to lead people. I've greenlit killing people, feeding them to everybody else to keep them alive. Yeah. So yeah, I've really gone down a dark path here. And one of the only people that knows about it is also calling him out on it here when he's carrying Ellie back to the town. Yeah.
Or dare I say it, not to take a Dexter moment, but does he already have the dark passenger inside him? Because that's the other side of it.
Absolutely.
As well. Yeah.
I'm so curious. Isn't there a whole thing that if you eat human flesh, after a certain point, you get sick, quite sick? Like, there's a whole...
Well, they're not looking the best either, but that could just be winter, lack of vitamin D, whatever.
I haven't studied it.
But you approve of it because that's what we're hearing. So we're saying if you were to, you would eat myself and John if we were there.
If we were stuck, yeah. No,
it's fine. I would shave off part of I've got a good bit of belly here. It's basically pork belly. I would be a good pork belly.
If you describe it like that, Chris, we may not have to wait till the apocalypse. That exactly. Sounds amazing. Wow, this is our darkest episode of TV Podcast.
I think it is.
Yeah.
But I think that, look, that's definitely enough of the human menu for now.
I think so, yeah.
We've descended into the darkest timeline.
Yeah.
So,
dark humor is prevailing at the moment, for sure.
John, do you want to tell us what your top moment is?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not much lighter, to be honest. It is Joel's interrogation of the two guys in the house.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, it's another scene that it is so brutal here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I certainly don't want to get interrogated by Joel anytime soon. I mean, it's kind of set up previously and I love the line about with David giving the orders, I'll bring Ellie back.
Mm-hmm.
You two bring the horse, it's more meat. And the rest of you go deliver your vengeance. And it was just really good as they're kind of combing through the town, and you see, a heavily injured Joel, managing to get the strength. I mean, we don't quite know the time lapse here as such, but it doesn't feel particularly long.
It's not.
So it's going to be massively painful. But you see him taking out one of the guys that is checking the basement, where he has been held up and is been recovering or trying to recover.
Yeah, so it's basically, just to give a timeline, it's Ellie stitches him up, he goes to sleep, she gives him a shot of penicillin at the end of the next day, and then wakes up the following morning and gives him another shot of penicillin. And then they're attacked. So it's that close. It's only like a day or two since the injury. So.
And it's a good shot, in fairness, of penicillin that is being given. So, certainly, it possibly is a good sort of initial plug, I'm guessing, but ultimately, he's still severely injured. So, you see him taking out one of the guys with the knife into the neck, and then gradually, using him as a trap. But the interrogation scene, in order to find out where Ellie is, where they've taken her to, is another really brutal scene in this episode.
Yeah.
And I mean, just the knife in the kneecap. I mean, my legs went kind of weird when that happened. Oh. And then he says, I'll pop the kneecap. And I'm like going, okay. Yeah. So it's the description. But I think what's really good here is that, the reason for showing this is it's a glimpse into the Joel of old.
Yes.
We've heard all the way through this series about what he needed to do to survive. You've heard it with Tommy as well, where Joel casually just says the things we did, and it's like, it's not the things we did, it's murder. We murdered people.
Yeah.
That Joel was vicious, brutal in terms of how he went about what he did for the reasons he did it, whether to protect himself, whether to protect the supply line or whatever it is. Yeah. And I love the fact that you get that glimpse here. I mean, to the point where even with the kneecap, I think the brutal thing is after the guy with the knife in his mouth points to the place on the map, like he did with the two old couple in the cabin earlier.
Yeah.
If you don't both point to the same place, I'll kill him.
Yeah.
Uses that same trick, but then after being shown where on the map, he just drives the knife straight into the stomach of the guy.
Yeah.
And then just immediately picks up a pipe to batter the head of the other one.
Yeah.
And the guy said, but you said, you'd only kill him if I said something different. He says, no, I believe him.
Yeah.
Like it's really just uncompromising.
Absolutely. And no panic attacks, remember?
Yeah.
This is Joel returning to his old ways after thinking that he needed to send Ellie with Tommy because he was too old for this, that he'd gone past his prime, he couldn't take care of Ellie anymore. Look what he's willing to do in order to get her back now that he knows she's gone. He's not anywhere near to full strength at all here. And that's what I love about the show. They didn't do a simple time jump and he's fine. He's still on death's door almost, but she's done just about enough to get him off his feet. So he's able to take out the first guy, and then everything else is done stealthily and quietly and really brutally. He almost kills, I think it's Marco is the one that he kills in the chair. He almost kills him by falling into him with the last ounce of strength that he has. And the other guy was knocked out and tied up, so he can't get away from Joel. So he's done it really smartly with all the strength that he has, but it is really brutal. And you're right, it is absolutely the Joel that you would have seen if you're following Joel 4 or 5 years into this apocalypse.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it just complicates his character so much.
You'd want to be Ellie and nobody else in this world, basically.
No, exactly. I mean, it really complicates his character. You know, he's not the bright grandpa to be who's going to give you a Werther's original here. Mm-hmm. It is literally, you know, it's really difficult to watch because it's just so brutal.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a reason for showing that, because it's to give that glimpse into Joel's history.
Yeah.
You know, and to show and to nuance his character, again, to actually add the detail of what's been mentioned previously.
Exactly.
So
he's not a good guy.
No.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's the thing they always try and bring you back to, is that Joel is not a good person. He's done terrible things to survive, but he's done terrible things. He's not afraid about doing terrible things. And the question then becomes, what else is he willing to do? Like, he's interrogated. You wouldn't even call it interrogated. He tortured the information out of these guys, and does not care. Like, he cuts that guy in the throat coming down when the guy's downstairs, and brutally in a way that basically the guy cannot scream for help.
Yeah.
Like he viciously and kind of does this.
I did describe that in my notes as one hit kill, because that's all he's able to do, basically.
Yeah.
And that's it, exactly. And it will give it, like you said, he's on death's door, but this is him on death's door, though. Mm-hmm. This is the bit you're being told to remember, that he's running on adrenaline.
Yeah.
That is what he is. His job is now from this point forward, is to save and continue to save Ellie. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that begs the question, again, to someone who hasn't played the games, what do you think of this as the choice? So you really do think that he's on his diehard vengeance moment here, where he's going to go out there and save Ellie, and he doesn't save Ellie in terms of the violence. No. It doesn't save her from David. She has to do that herself. So the choice here, if you've been following the show and thinking Joel is your main character and Ellie's the person that he has to take care of, in this episode, it's Ellie taking care of Joel, and then Ellie taking care of herself, and then Joel being there to comfort her.
Yeah. Joel's the dad. Joel is not the central character. Joel is the dad. Joel is your protagonist. Ellie's your protagonist.
Yeah.
And they're slowly building. They're showing you, and they've alluded to it, Ellie has a dark side, which is growing and becoming worse. And the factor, the final lesson we'll get from Joel, is for Ellie to learn that violence can be contained and directed in the right manner.
Maybe.
Like, you use your violence to protect, or the thing you're trying to protect.
Maybe.
Be it Tess.
Can't wait till you see the end of the series, Chris.
I know. This is why I'm both very joyful that you guys have played it, but also like the odd smirk and the twitch of the eye. I'm like, am I onto something, or am I not?
Yeah, we're not going to give anything away at all. But you're right. You know, he does play the role of the father at times. But again, the trope is the father goes and saves the helpless 14-year-old teenage daughter, and he doesn't do it here. And I love that choice. It flips that whole expectation on its head, especially because you have this massively brutal, violent scene where he interrogates the information out of them. And it's early enough after Ellie's been taken that you go, oh, okay, I think it'll all work out now. He's going to get there just in time to save her from the bad men. That's not what happens.
And I mean, speaking of the game, in terms of this sequence as well, you have this
shot for shot. Yeah.
Injured Joel, having to sort of take down these guys, in that moment, and the interrogation. You have as well the sequence with Ellie where she's taken back by David. That's actually shortened. That's cropped. There's much more of her having to kind of sneak through and take out these raiders as well. Yeah. So there's more of them. But I mean, just coming back to the quote that David said to the guys, he said, "If the rest of you are so hungry for vengeance, then deliver it."
Yes.
And the vengeance is delivered by Joel.
Exactly.
Ultimately.
Exactly.
In order to get information, you know. So it's just really like, it's a tough watch. This episode, but there are rhymes and reasons for that, and I think it's pulled off really, really well.
Without a doubt, yeah, without a doubt. And the whole series has been such a tough watch, really. In a lot of ways. They're not shying away from anything in this show, but there is a real reason behind everything here. It's not violence for violence sake. They've avoided having, hordes of zombies, which they could have done, or a normal show would do, or a normal game would do. Specifically, you would have hordes and hordes of things to kill. They're telling a story, and a lot of this is emotional, and a lot of it's brutal because of what's going on, but it's totally understandable and totally in character for the characters that we've got here.
Agreed. I think it's also the fact that this is, in some ways, is the first time it's directed solely at Joel and Ellie because of what happened at the University of Colorado. Yeah. In that brief, fleeting moment where to them they were protecting themselves, but they kill one of these, one of the townsfolk of this group. So
who asked for it? So, they attacked them.
No, exactly. But it means that for David, for James, for all these people, the focus of their the focus of their vengeance is on these two. Back in Kansas City, they get embroiled in what's happening. It's not it's not that it's less personal, but it just so happens that if there had been a chance to explain, there's an explanation there.
Yeah.
They can't explain this other than, well, we were defending ourselves. Yeah. That could be what they were going to do, because them scavenging, was it for humans? So actually, yes, they are justified, but the other side will never think that.
Yeah. Exactly.
So
exactly.
I just liked how it's like it's more personal, effectively.
I agree. And again, I think it's a really good example of how this show is able to tell you that every single person here obviously is the center of their own story, and all of them have lived experience of 20 years post-apocalypse. Yeah. What have all of these people gone through and done to get to the point that they're in now, 20 years on from the apocalypse, and then someone runs across the path of Joel and Ellie and dies because of it for whatever reason. They were out searching for food because their entire town was starving. Nobody stopped to talk to each other about it. One of them is lying dead now. And look what happens to Ellie and Joel because of it. And look what happens to that entire community because of it as well. So I love how they're writing this show. They're really filling out the corners of this world that they've created, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Derek, on to our third and final point.
I know we've mentioned him a lot, but he is such a central character to the show. Let's just talk about David in the show and what his storyline and his character in the show, because I just think it's a really fascinating villain. One of the first real villains we've seen in the show overall, right? The one I think this is probably the biggest villain that we see in the show, because he's terrifying in the fact that he's pretends not to be. He's got that mask of God over the face of the devil, right? Is kind of what I describe him as. whole scene where he meets Ellie, you've already talked about that piece earlier on, but the fact that he stays behind with Ellie, sending James off to get the penicillin to help Joel. He knows exactly who Joel is. He's heard the story. He knows Joel's been injured, so that's confirmation to him. We know that the other raiders got back and told him all the details they had about Joel and Ellie. So he, from the moment he meets her, knows exactly who this person must be.
Oh yeah.
And he tries to get into her confidence. He tries to play up the friendly pastor, the friendly preacher is what he says. And I love the joke from Ellie, where he says that he's gone from being a teacher to a preacher. And she said, "Why would you do that? It's the post-apocalypse. Everybody knows there's no God now. Did you do it just because the two words rhyme? Is that because that could be the only reason, right?" And he takes it on the chin. He takes the kind of jibing until eventually he reveals to her who he is, that he knows who she is, and that he will get his vengeance, or the town will get their vengeance on Joel, but not her, because he has other sights for her. And the build of that, the build of what his plan is, and I think it's pretty early on as to what the plan is, that in his absolutely warped sense of self and his absolutely warped mind, that she's going to be the queen of Riverside and he will be the king, and the two of them together will rule over the minions that seem to have put him as their idol, have put him as their leader, has put him as their god, almost. There's a really telling moment, and this is the one I'll take the pin back out of when you talked about religion earlier on. There's a really telling moment when he has the conversation with Ellie in jail, where he effectively says, yes, he was a teacher. These people needed a leader, so I became that leader. It's almost like he's saying he doesn't really believe in the religion at all.
Oh, absolutely.
He didn't beforehand. He was a school teacher. But another way of getting himself into a leadership role, being a respected member of the community, and being worshipped by some people, was telling them what's in the Bible. It's as if he'd just kind of go, well, if it had been something else, if people wanted someone that knew everything about television shows, I would be the one that would know everything about television shows, and then I would have become their leader. It means nothing to him. He is an absolutely horrific character. The fact that he says the way that he says to Ellie about his teaching career gives you the first indication of the kind of person he is. He says to her, "I was a teacher of kids around your age." And you get that kind of development of what he's trying to do, of the pedophilia that's inside of him, the fact that he wants Ellie as his future queen, the fact that the way that he touches her as he brings her closer to the side of the cage, the way that he touches her hand, this is a bad man that you want to steer really clear of. And Ellie is so trapped in this situation. She is absolutely, I guess, like the deer in the sights of the hunting rifle at the beginning. She is the prey that's been trapped by this predator.
100%. And it's the way they reveal him to be the predator that he is.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Was he? The question I have, one question: is he a pedophile in the game, or is it alluded to? Or is it just directly called out as well as this?
It is the exact line that David says in the restaurant as it burns down around them. That exact line is exactly how it's delivered to you in the game. Yeah, and I think almost every line from the game is transferred. It's little movements here and there, of course, and but like James is there, David's there, exactly the same as in the game. They're all have these scenes the way they are. The scene you don't get actually as much is the two of them sitting around getting his history and how he became the leader of this group. That's not as detailed, but the build up, I suppose, of you think he's on your side and he turns on you, and you're playing as Ellie. The fact that those twists and turns are all in there in the game. Yeah.
And you don't really have the religious side of things either. Yeah. And you've I think you're really just immersed into the fact that they are long-standing cannibals. That's what I mean. So I think that's where it kind of changes a few of these things up. Mm-hmm. I also like the fact that, in the cell when he's speaking to Ellie confronts him because she sees the ear on the ground of the butcher's block. Mm-hmm. But he's just like, these people are weak. They're like sheep. It's almost like he's using them, as well as the younger girls like Hannah that he slaps down in the restaurant. It's also, and I kind of like how it plays out, because I think for him, he feels he's weighed up Ellie, because he sees that, as he says to her, I see the violence in you. I can see that you'll be a strong leader, which we've heard from Joel, and from her Fedra
absolutely
captain, that you're loyal, obviously, to Joel, and resourceful.
Yeah. And we've seen her loyalty in the last episode.
Exactly.
And to Riley,
so he suddenly thinks he's a bird of a feather here. He's with someone that he can treat with, but she just knows she has that, she kind of just deep inside of her has that sense about him.
Yeah.
And, I think it's when, you hear him actually, his God is not God. It's the cordyceps, where he says, they secure their future violently if needed. That's what I'm doing here. In a sense, he talks about admiring them about how they do it. And in a sense, that's why he's got to put this veil across his true intentions, and picks up the book, the Bible, to keep that veil there, as you say, the devil's mask. And it's just so good. I mean, he's so creepy, and I think Scott Shepherd is
just brilliant,
just so good here in terms of how he moves this character, how he portrays him through this episode. I mean, to the final moments in the burning restaurant as well.
Yeah,
he is as uncompromising as Joel in a different way.
Yeah. And the lines he says when you look back with the knowledge that he is a pedophile, that's where you're like, oh God, he's worse than we expected. Like, so the line where he says, I'm your father to Hannah, after he slaps her, it's just like, oh no, you're worse.
Yeah.
Because like, it's just like he wants his little harem of women. Young women.
Yeah.
Girls.
Yeah, I don't know. I took that one more as, because the full line that he says to her is, if you think you don't have a father, you do have one, and respect him when he's speaking. It is much more of a controlling, leader piece that he's saying. Remember, he's saying it in front of a whole room full of people, in that moment. And it feels like with Ellie in his absolutely warped mind, he does feel like he's found someone that can sit by his side. It's interesting you called out that line where he says, I'm a shepherd and everybody here is just sheep, when in fact he's a wolf and everybody there is sheep, effectively. And he thinks he's found another wolf, another person full of violence. I do think he sees Ellie as something completely apart from this group of sheep in the town. I don't think he would take anybody. I think he specifically is looking for someone like Ellie, and that's what is really building that violence up in Ellie, building that anger up in Ellie, because he's looking at her and all he can see in her is someone like him. And that's not Ellie. Ellie's not been a person like David ever, but he is looking at her and seeing himself in her and all the things that she has built around her, all the defenses that she's built around her. He's seeing those as violence. He's seeing those as a person capable of doing the things that David is doing. And it's getting her so aggravated and aggressive, that moment where she breaks his finger to get the keys out from him to get out of the cage. Like, that moment is the first moment of, I am nothing like you. I'm underlining it here. I'm nothing like you. The moment when he tries to rape her in the restaurant, it's the words that he's saying to her, where he's saying, you'll learn now that it is the fighting that's part of it. It makes it more enjoyable for me, but in love, there is no fighting. Again, it's him mistakenly telling Ellie this is part of the love that he feels for her, which is why she goes absolutely off on one when she gets out from under him and gets the cleaver. She is absolutely not going to accept this from anybody, but definitely not somebody who thinks that she's like them.
Yeah.
It's so well done. You mentioned about the performance there, but everything in the build up here
Absolutely
delivered by Bella Ramsey is so much more, and does build to this moment. You can have a brutal moment in an episode, you can have a violent moment in the episode, but the build up that they've delivered with these two characters against each other throughout the episode, I think is just absolutely brilliant. It's really,
it justifies the response, and you see why that response is happening because of that build up. Absolutely.
Yeah. And again, it's really difficult to watch. As you say, there is that moment of, yes, absolutely right, Ellie, you go kill him. You go, oh God, oh wow, okay, all right. He does deserve it, but you have gone so brutal because of everything else that's built to this moment. There is a cheer moment when something like that happens to a pedophile in a TV show. Yeah, it's happened before. They've been killed in TV shows, but this moment here is everything coming from Ellie. There's much more nuance to it. There's much more to it.
Well, it's also the response in the cell to her, because after she's broken his fingers, because he batters her face into the cell, and maybe he's expecting subservience from that or fear, and you just get defiance.
Absolutely.
But it's gone is the buddy boy irreverence or the jokey you went from teacher to preacher. This is her absolutely just saying it how it is. With no window dressing, with no comedy or anything like that. And
my name is Ellie. You can tell people Ellie is the little girl who broke your finger.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. Go on, Ellie.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely brilliant moment. Just love that power that she takes back, and she's in a cage. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Anything more for this point?
Nothing else for this point?
No. Okay.
Nothing from me.
On to notes. Anyone got any notes for the episode?
Nothing from me.
I know I have one. It's kind of, again, a bit of an off-kilter comedy moment. I think after Hannah has been slapped and you have David then, going into a prayer before the food, and it's all been silent because, he's just slapped Hannah down to the ground and delivered, his little speech there in front of this whole restaurant filled with his group. And so there's this deathly silence, and then with the prayer, it's just him speaking, and just when he finishes that, you just get this clackety clack of all the spoons as they feed, it's almost like part of the soundtrack because it just keeps going, and it's really I kind of chuckled to myself with it because I was like, is that just me hearing that, or is that purposeful from the sound engineer, just how the direction's done? Because it was almost like, all right, now we must just talk about random stuff to forget that happened. It was like, oh, quick. It was just like clackety clack, clackety clack, 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 as they were all kind of scraping the bowls of the, I guess, human soup.
But almost like a feeding frenzy as well. Yeah.
But nervous. It felt nervous. It felt agitated. It felt like it was almost trying to sort of distance what had just happened.
Absolutely.
And I thought it was really good. But I also found it slightly amusing.
Yeah, and I suppose it also indicates, that the whole scene had started with them not eating because he'd arrived home. They'd found out about Joel being alive, and they were waiting for their master, their leader, to tell them what was going to happen. And he has told them they're going to get a night's sleep. They're going to go out there. They're going to get them the next day. They're going to find them. So they're saying, leader's back now. We can continue. We can eat. I thought that was a really good touch in the episode as well. Just one final thing on the story. I do like how they lay out why they're in the situation that they're in. I just kind of want to mention it because I did like how it was laid out. They're in this place, obviously Silver Lake, this beautiful resort on the side of a lake. Well, beautiful during springtime. And how they've gotten to this is effectively, it's a resort that you would go to for a few weeks holidays. It probably looked gorgeous at the beginning of the year, then planted a few crops, and then, oh God, the winter's come. There is nothing else around here, because there never was. Pick your place to go to in the apocalypse really, really keenly. It's you got to make these decisions. You know, we had heard what happened in Jamestown was it was a gated community that had everything in it, and they built out from there. Yeah. So they've spent all the time picking a really good place. Yeah, the winters are harsh, but we planned for that because it already was set up quite well. We had a generator down the road, you know, everything was working well. Here they've picked a place that looked really nice when they arrived there and got progressively more hellish as time went on. So, I just thought that was a really interesting little, kind of drop from David, as to why it's gone so bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And final note from me is just R.I.P. James with the cleaver to the neck from Ellie. Troy Baker getting his cleaver put back, I guess, into the wrong knife drawer, into his neck. So I kind of liked how she buys for time with the I'm infected, and because she's bitten David, you're now infected.
Yes. Yeah, great little moment there. Yeah.
Of course, potentially we'll never know whether he would be infected.
That's true. Will this be the game mechanic from now on? Ellie just goes around biting people and seeing if they get cordyceps from her or not. No. But really quick thinking and really a really good moment as well. Yeah, but game Joel killed by TV show Ellie.
Yeah.
He won't be coming back for season 2.
Don't think so.
Okay, then, that's all the notes from us. Let us get into our wrap-up. Chris, overall, what did you think of episode 8 of The Last of Us, When We Are in Need?
I could have eaten it up with a rare side of beef, piece of Chianti, human liver, a bit of buttock, and some pork belly. My own pork belly.
All right.
It was absolutely great. I love this. Sickening in a lot of cases because of the topics that were brought up. But overall, just fun to watch, deteriorating from an...
Fun to watch? That's not what I was thinking you were going to say.
Fun to watch from and deteriorating across the kind of... As the story goes, you're like, oh my God, it's worse and worse and worse and worse. And then you're building to, yay, Ellie's getting... She's getting free. She's doing it. Okay, Ellie, stop. Okay, Ellie, stop. Okay, you've gone too far.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, that's a lot of blood. And then she runs out and she's there and she's like, I'm here for you, baby girl. And you're like, oh, everything's right with the world as they kind of hobble into the ice towards the river. And you're like, oh yeah, everything's not right in the world, but everything's right now. So... I don't even know how I would rank it or where, but just enjoyed the hell out of this episode.
Yeah.
And amazed that we're one left.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good stuff. Derek, what about yourself?
I love this episode. This is one that I was definitely looking forward to. I think this section of the game is really tough in itself. There's a couple of major changes, which I haven't minded about all season. Of course, it's not that this is a TV show. I've got the game. I'll always go back and play it. But there's one big thing that isn't in the show that does help in the game. Effectively, when David and I hope people don't mind me spoiling this a little bit, but when David and Ellie meet for the first time and they're left alone by James, the two of them have to fight off one of the biggest hordes of infected that you see in the game. They fight them off together. David helping Ellie, saving her life. Ellie helping David, saving his life. And by the end of it, because if you're like me, you've spent about 4 hours fighting alongside this guy, you kind of think of, well, actually, if Joel is dead, maybe David could be the next person that you're hanging out with for the rest of the game. He is the person that's going to take care of you now, and you're going to take care of him, and you're going to fight alongside him for the rest of the game. So by having a sequence where the two of them have fought off the real threat in this world, which is the infected, the two of them are bonded almost a bit more, let's say, by having that big battle sequence together. And by not having that in the show and it just all being told in that dialogue when the two of them are sitting around the fire, I certainly felt more worried for Ellie in that moment than I did in the game. I didn't feel worried for her after that scene because you'd fought alongside him for a while.
Well, that's it, yeah.
I think that part of the game is only supposed to take about 10 minutes, but that's where I repeatedly died over and over again when fighting alongside David. But it felt like that bit built a rapport between the two characters. The episode overall, though, I think this version of David, the story that they've told on the show, is a really, really important story to tell. And I think it's done so well. And it closing out with Joel taking her in his arms and saying, "I've got you, baby girl," just like he said to Sarah back at the beginning of the season. He's finally calling Ellie his daughter now. We've said they've gotten closer and closer. We've said they've had moments where it feels like it's father and daughter, but right now he's using the same nickname that he called his own daughter at the end of this episode. This is absolutely the one person in the world that he's chosen to protect, and it's a massive moment for these two characters as they go into their final arc, I guess. So, brilliant episode overall. John, how about yourself? What do you think of the 8th episode of The Last of Us?
Well, before I do, I'm still thinking of Chris getting buttocks on a plate. Of course, the best cut, of course.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
whether next
Most
time,
tender.
and whether next time in a restaurant I might just ask for beef buttocks when I order a rump steak.
I always thought that was what beef cheeks were.
No, cheeks are on the face.
Ah, okay, yeah.
As in those cheeks.
Oh, right.
Yes. It's rump.
That's true.
So yes, I might just see how the waiter responds to, "I'll have your finest beef buttocks, please." Rare. Or medium rare.
Or medium rare, yes.
Should I say. But no, for me,
I think in that case it's a chef's choice, John.
yes, but moving swiftly on, I thought this was great, this episode. I'd give it 5 Carpaccio James out of 5. Forget your stews, slithers of James put out onto a plate, I think. Fizzled in
really
oil.
dark episode.
Some capers, maybe. Bit of mustard.
You were going
yummy.
back to your Hannibal days, John.
I know. Well, I did like Hannibal. But certainly, yes, I can definitely tell our fellow survivors I'm not a cannibal.
Yes.
But they are intriguing.
And we did cover season 3 of Hannibal as our first official show on TV podcast industry. So yeah, we do have going all the way back about 700 episodes.
But I mean, I think just to pull, what you guys have said, I mean, this is just really good. A great antagonist in David, just, slithering around literally through the episode till you really understand the true intentions and in a sense how manipulative he is, not just towards Ellie and how he's trying to groom Ellie, but also in a sense his flock as well. Really good. Some really brutal scenes in here from Joel and Ellie, but ones I think that are just done in a way because of the build up and the aftermath of the scenes and how they are portrayed, in particular by Bella Ramsey, who I just thought was phenomenal here, in this episode. I mean, just so good. So, I really, really enjoyed that. I liked how they brought Troy Baker in, who voiced Joel in the game. We've said that, but it's a really good touch. I love it when shows do this. I think it makes a lot of sense because in a sense he's created this character first. And I think that's just really good recognition. And I just thought, I think as you've said, Derek, here we see Ellie protecting Joel and protecting herself.
Yeah.
It's not the knight in shining armor coming to the rescue.
No.
It's in a sense a slightly unhinged older man with an infected belly, who doesn't get there in time. And I like how they've shown that glimpse of Joel's methods from before this time, this moment. So
Absolutely.
I really enjoyed this. I'd give this 5 Carpaccios of James out of 5.
Excellent. I was completely confused by you calling him infected. I was trying to work out who you were talking about.
No, exactly.
There.
That's why I kind
of infected in the show means infected. But it is good that you mentioned that as well, because we talked about it really early on in the season. I think in the first episode, there's the opening scene where they talk about in the 60s, where they're talking about the uses for fungi. One of those uses is penicillin, right? Fungus did produce penicillin, and here we have penicillin being used to treat Joel's wound. So fungi still has positive uses in this world, even though it's killing every single person. Well, if it gets to them, the cordyceps will kill everybody. Yeah.
Well, like the Jedi, there is a dark and light side
to fungi. Yes. There's what? How many species are there? 100 million species of fungi,
loads,
isn't it? Something like that.
Loads.
So yeah, but I do like that it is something that's derived from fungus that's helping to save Joel here in this episode. Quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah. I can't believe I didn't bring that one up earlier, because I remembered it from the first episode and then forgot to write it in my notes. Good stuff. I do think it's time for a drink, though, guys, after this episode.
Definitely, yes. Fellow quizzers, fellow survivors, welcome to the Last of Us World's End pub quiz.
Absolutely, coming from a secret location this week, because I guess that's the question, isn't it? John, do you want to give our wonderful fellow survivors the 8th question of 9 in our Last of Us pub quiz?
Yes, question 8. What is the name of the restaurant in Silver Lake?
See, we'd normally call the location after that for our drink, but we're not doing it this time. So, John, give the question one more time.
What is the name of the restaurant in Silver Lake? Answers on a postcard. Nope. And by postcard, I do mean feedback at tvpodcastindustries.com, where you can send in all 9 answers to us by email. Yeah. And just as a quick reminder, if you rate us, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, if you send in those details, you'll also have an additional entry into the pub quiz draw, and you'll be in with a chance for some Last of Us goodies, which are, certainly if you're a gamer, it will be the Last of Us Part 1 game on PC or PlayStation 5, your choice. If you're not a gamer, there will be other Last of Us goodies as well.
Yes, we will have another option as well, but the game's only coming out next month in March, towards the end of March, for a PC, so we know lots of people don't have it on PC, and I'm probably looking forward to playing it. And don't worry about all my jokes about how difficult it is. You can lower the difficulty to really, really low, so you can just play the story through the game if you want to as well. So there are ways to play it, but I tend to make my life difficult.
Yes, you like a challenge.
Yes,
exactly.
Good stuff, guys. Let us move on to our feedback.
Absolutely, yeah. Just wanted to call out, I didn't mention on the podcast last week, it totally got on top of me. Our 750th episode of TV Podcast Industries was our coverage of The Last of Us Episode 7. Thanks so much to all of you that got in contact to congratulate us on 750 episodes over the last 9 years of TV Podcast Industries. The only reason people know it is because when I posted it everywhere, I was like, wow, the number is 750. I must tell everybody. And forgot to tell my fellow co-hosts that it was our 750th episode. We should plan these better. Work it out. How many more have we got to 1,000? We got to do something for it.
250.
Okay.
Well,
not now.
You got to do more work, John, than 250. That could be 3 years, or knowing our record, that's probably going to be about a year and a half.
I've said it.
I think a year and a half or less.
Yeah.
Actually. Yeah.
I've said it. I think we should celebrate with an in-person pub quiz at some kind of convention.
Yes. That would be pretty awesome.
That
we
would
probably
be pretty
need
good.
to plan. If it's only a year and a half away, we probably need to start planning that now. So maybe just a Zoom quiz, back in the days of COVID, or back in the days of the 500th episode of TV Podcast Industries.
Yeah,
but I'll just use this time to say thank you to all of those that reached out to say congratulations to us on our 750th episode.
Yes, big thanks, everyone.
Yes, thank you so much. And if you'd like to get us a present, don't forget you can head over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where you can support us as a lovely 750th birthday anniversary present. Thank you.
But you can also support us through buymeacoffee.com. If you want to just give us a one-off donation towards the podcast, you can buy us a coffee. A huge thank you to Kimberly, who supported us on Buy Me a Coffee this week. As I say, I discovered this podcast last year when looking for a podcast recapping The Sandman on Netflix. I was hooked immediately and I'm now a regular listener to the show. Keep up the great work.
Excellent stuff.
Thanks so much, Kimberly.
Yeah, thanks, Kimberly. Really good to get your support there through Buy Me a Coffee.
Yeah,
great
absolutely.
stuff. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for the coffee.
Absolutely, and another one of the great shows that we've covered on TV podcast industry. Sandman was fantastic. Looking forward to the second season of that too.
Yeah.
Yes, and we'll be back with the second season of Neil Gaiman's Good Omens.
Absolutely.
Some point this year?
Summertime.
Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah, already confirmed summertime this year. All
Excellent
filming's
stuff.
completed, it's all ready to go. So just a couple more months to return to the world, one of the worlds of Neil Gaiman. More comedy tinged world than Sandman was.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, but still has angels and demons.
Exactly.
Definitely. And of course, you can support us by sending in your thoughts, theories, and comments on each and every episode. We love discussing and listening to your feedback. But first up, on last week's episode, Suzanne Nelson, who says, I couldn't stop wondering whether Ellie had to shoot Riley or if she leaves her in the mall. Both endings seem hard to fathom. So what did happen? Totally bummed that this show is coming to an end. I really didn't like the story of the second game, so not sure if I'll watch season 2 unless they really deviate from the game. Going to enjoy the season while it lasts. Suzanne.
Thanks, Suzanne. I the way I read it is that Marlene, who's one of the firefighters, leads the fireflies in that section, kind of, I'm assuming, found Ellie in the mall and took her with her. Because we know she was then locked up for up to 3 weeks while she was bitten. So, and while they waited for her to turn. So I'm assuming because they went back for their pipe bombs, found a rabid or non-rabid Ellie.
Yeah. I think that's what happened with Ellie. But in terms of Riley, as we talked about on last week's podcast, yeah, it's pretty much definitive that it is Ellie that had to kill Riley. So that is the person that she killed. So I think Bella Ramsey has discussed that in interviews now since the episode aired, that is how unfortunately that scene ended. And she, like all of us, are really glad that the scene wasn't shown. But I think we discussed that quite a bit at the end of last week's episode. But yeah, I think you're right, Chris. Though how Ellie ended up in the hands of Marlene, yeah, it would make sense that they were coming back to check their stuff, or Marlene was in the streets and met Ellie on the way back to Fedra potentially after her being bitten. Yeah,
or getting Riley to go off to her new location in Atlanta
the following day. Yes, of course, she would have been coming up the following day to get Riley to bring her off to Atlanta. That's right.
Yeah,
and yeah, of course, on the second game of Last of Us, I think we only got through so much of it because we ended off in a real difficulty loop, or at least for me, where I couldn't get past a number of, I think it was clickers at the time, but certainly I think they'd also changed some of the game mechanics. So there was AI in there that made all the antagonists, whether it was a clicker or a human, change up every time you died. So it wasn't always the same. You couldn't necessarily figure out the patterns, which tends to be what I do if they don't use, if it's a thick game. Whereas this became a bit more, so this became a little bit more sentient in that regard.
Yeah.
So, but I know you've started back on it, but I was enjoying the story. I thought it was really interesting. I wasn't expecting it to go that way, to be honest.
Yeah. I have started back up on it again, and I have realized that you can change all that stuff to just have an experience of the story. Yeah, one of the things they really did add to that second game is the advanced technology that they had on your enemies, where it's stuff like, if you shoot someone random in the first game, it's fine. You know, that's what games are like. You shoot someone. Now, if you shoot someone, you hear someone over in the right-hand side calling out for Brian, you know, and then calling out going like, my boyfriend's dead. You know, it's like all of them have these really intricate backstories that are built into the game. So suddenly everybody in this world has gotten their own little backstory, and it plays out in the game depending on who you killed or who you get past. So really complex game, but really good, and definitely hoping to go back to it after we finish this season. So I'm looking forward to getting back to that game next time. It's a shame you didn't like the story though, Suzanne. You never know. The show might be quite different. Hopefully, it might play differently even on TV than it did in the game.
Yeah, maybe.
Thanks so much for your feedback though, Suzanne.
Yeah, thanks, Suzanne.
Thanks, Suzanne. Next up, we have on this episode, we have feedback from Mindy Megan, who had this to say: Joel calling Ellie baby girl. Oh, brings me to tears. Also, thank you, HBO, for once again setting all rapists on fire.
Mm-hmm.
You are welcome. I'm responding as HBO.
On behalf of HBO, you're welcome.
You're welcome.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Mindy. We also have some feedback from David, Mr. Writer, who had this to say: after last week's Snooze Fest, good episode, but snooze compared to this. They're back, baby. Wow, where do I begin? The Negan homage with the spikeless Lucille by Joel. The realization that the preacher told the girl her dad would be buried in the spring, but yet he's stewed dinner. Also, almost seems like the priest was grooming her a bit. Ooh, he was. I'm live reacting as we go along. Mm-hmm. Scott Shepherd, who plays David, was great at turning on and off his charm, appearing genuinely nice to evil with a snap of a finger. Ellie looked menacing when she broke his finger too. Yeah. That Fedra training comes in handy. Mm-hmm. The innocence of Ellie has officially left the chat after that facial rearrangement she left the preacher. Side note, I almost got misty-eyed when she saw Joel outside, and the Oscar, Emmy, and all the above goes to Bella Ramsey, by far their best performance from the whole season. Wow, wow, wow. Yeah, I'll even jump in on that. Thanks, David. The ending, I got you, baby girl. Like as Mindy said, like she had the kind of tear emojis in her feedback, and I just same. And the same as you. Like, I know you said almost misty-eyed, but I definitely got it. There was some salt or pepper thrown in my face at that particular moment.
Right.
Followed by chilies. Followed
by chilies, and then I rubbed it in really, just like, you know, and it was because I was eating the pork belly and the steak tartare.
I know you always pretend you don't have a heart, Chris. I'll just say it for you. I cried at that moment. I thought it was absolutely beautiful.
It was
a really good moment between the two characters. Excellent.
And such a defining moment as well for their relationship. Yeah, really, really good. And David, loved your pun, intended or otherwise. From your feedback. Good stuff. Yes, the Fedra training really did come in handy.
Yes, it did.
For the broken fingers.
We like Gallows humour around here with really dark episodes. So,
yes, yep, I think so. I think that's why we do so well with the boys as well. Quite dark, really. Yes. For sure. And I totally agree with you around Scott Shepherd. I thought he was phenomenal in this, along with Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal again. You know, all just bringing their A game. So great stuff. Thanks, David.
Absolutely. Thanks, David. We also had some feedback from Victor Von Doom, who said that was one intense episode. One could see the evil emanating from David in every scene. Ellie truly showed her grit. The group meal was revolting, as we all know what's on the bill of fare. Was that high-quality antibiotics Ellie administered, or most likely adrenaline and concern for Ellie as Joel went full Mando on the cultists? I was both cheering and chilled as Ellie cut loose on David. I believe the horrific events will help both Ellie and Joel break through some walls. Once again, bravo storytelling and bravo TVPI.
Yay!
Yay! Thank you, Victor.
Thanks, Victor.
Yeah, good stuff. Yeah,
full Mando
indeed, and full intensity.
Yeah.
I think they dialed up that coffee to level 6, I guess.
I guess so.
The dial goes all the way to 11.
It does.
Not on coffee, it doesn't.
In my coffee, it does.
Well, that's true. Same here.
My Nespresso boost. It
goes up to 111.
veins.
Love it. Thanks, Victor.
Yeah, thanks, Victor.
Donald Dennis says, before we started watching, Connie said, I hope there's more action in this episode. And for the first bit, it looked like another tension building episode, but it eventually paid off in blood. This episode was a mirror image of what we had in Jackson, where Joel's brother lived. It showed the innate corruption that occurs when one person gets too much influence, and shined that through a lens of the abuses of organised religion and impious leaders. With them casting Joel as a madman for defending himself against deadly attacks, it showed me just how sheltered the community was from what was really going on. Though, wow, when Ellie was taken, Joel's brutality came through here like we hadn't previously seen. This whole exchange really hints at what lengths he will go to in order to protect the people he loves. At the end of the final conflict, Connie said, oh no, Ellie's been abused before. Based on Ellie's extreme reaction, that makes sense. But in the Last of Us world, everyone has been put through some sort of ringer. There are many triggers that could have caused her to go so berserk. Ellie was very clever in this episode, breaking his finger to get the keys, revealing that she was tainted to stop them from butchering her for food, and how she handled the fight. Do you think Ellie set the building on fire on purpose? It could have been, but I didn't look. I wonder how they will cap this whole thing off next week. Excellent, Donald. Actually, I do think she set the building alight. There's the moment that she takes the piece of wood that's on fire, she throws it towards David, but she's definitely angling it past his head to catch the curtains on the back window. That's why she's got a lit piece of wood rather than any other implement that she could have chosen from the kitchen. I think she's thinking really quickly, if I set this place on fire, it'll give me an advantage, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, Donald, I think as well, you're absolutely right. That whole exchange, the brutality from Joel once Ellie had been taken, it certainly hints at, the lengths he will go to protect people.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yes, thank you so much, Donald. The final piece of feedback comes from Janet Flemmer, who had this to say: David's helping of stew was 4 times the size of everyone else's. Will those broken cultists recover from this? No one came to his defense. What was in the drugs, and why would David hand them over? Yeah, that was one I even noticed. Like, everyone else got the small bowl, and he got the nice big plate with the helping.
Mm-hmm.
But I suppose that's the leader part. And I think no one came to his defense because probably no one heard. And the guys got away just in time. Again, that's the hope.
Yeah, exactly. Like, they're kind of pointing out that the butchering is only known by about, the 4 people? Yeah, we said that earlier on in the episode, and most of the town doesn't know about it, and the butchering happens in this building, right? Am I right in that it's roughly around this area of town that it's happening? Is where they're butchering the meat for service, I guess. So you would presume that
dinner service.
I'm trying to work out the best way to say it, but I guess the rest of the town it would be spread out a bit, right? So they're not around the area, not close to the area, and it's not a huge length of time that this happens, that the fire happens. So I presume they're going to get there pretty soon afterwards and try and put out the fire. But it's not a huge amount of time. It's not like the building's burning for 25 minutes or an hour, or the scene's taking place over that kind of length of time. It's a couple of minutes, and then Ellie gets out and they go off together. So so I don't know whether they're not standing in his way or not trying to save him. I guess they just haven't got there in time. As for the bowl of stew, I took that he has a bigger bowl of stew because he knows exactly what's in it and doesn't really care.
Oh, that's another one.
Yeah.
I was just more like,
because he is a monster. He is a monster. He's feeding himself on other people. It's like as if he's getting a wish almost.
But it even seemed as though the rest of them were getting some kind of like really thin soup, whereas he got a stew.
Right, I get you.
Yeah.
So
it's kind of like it's the king,
the king's broth.
Yeah, the king of the court, and he gets all the prime bits to some extent. And
prime rib, if you will.
Exactly, but I think as well, probably part of the reason why no one comes to his defense. I mean, it could be the timing, it could be where they're actually located, and I think on the drugs must have been penicillin. I think
it was penicillin, definitely,
for sure.
But why was he willing to hand them over? Because he wanted something else from them, and this is his way to get Ellie.
Yeah, it was a bigger plan. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but good stuff. Thanks, Janice, and thanks to all our fellow survivors for their feedback. Really good to hear your thoughts. You can, of course, for the remaining final episode, episode 9. You can send in your thoughts by email to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Pop on over and join the Facebook group over at facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, where you can leave your comments in the spoiler post. And of course, we are on Twitter. Let's not leave Twitter out.
Okay.
Although maybe we do with old Musky. But we're over on Twitter as well at TV Pod Industries.
Yeah, don't call that out very often.
We don't.
No. But we're there.
We're there.
We are there.
And active.
We are there and square. But we are also at the moment, fellow survivors, as you are probably aware at this stage, covering Star Wars The Bad Batch each week, as well as Star Trek Picard's. So if you've had your fill of Earth-bound drama, you can head on into space, into 2 different galaxies, far, far away, and far, far away in time, I guess. So yes, they're the other 2 podcasts that we're covering at the moment.
God, one's a long time ago in a galaxy far away. One is a long time in the future in a galaxy close by. not the way you describe Star Wars versus Star Trek?
I guess so, yes. You're
Good
right.
It's boldly going where no one's gone before.
Exactly.
And the other one is far, far away in a galaxy long time ago. No, long. Oh my God.
You see?
Anyway.
Look,
You see, when you're on the fly, you're like, wait, what was it? Long.
All
Yes.
good. All good. But yes, 2 other really interesting shows, very different from The Last of Us coming. I can't believe we've only got 1 more episode left of The Last of Us next week. I can't wait for you to join us as well. Thanks so much for listening along throughout the show.
Yes, thank you so much, and we'll speak to you again next week.
Yes, thank you so much, fellow survivors, for joining us for episode 8. Cannot wait to discuss The Last of Us, the final episode, episode 9.
The last of them, I guess.
Well, exactly.
The last of it.
The last of it. Entitled.
We don't really know for definite. We think this one's called Look for the Light, which would be in contrast to the first episode of the season, which was When You're in the Darkness, Look to the Light. It's the Fireflies motto, I guess. So we think it's called Look for the Light as a nice bookend to the series, but unfortunately don't know just yet.
Okay, speculation on our part, but
Yeah.
good speculation.
Absolutely.
I think.
That's all we do, Harry, sometimes.
Sometimes it's not even good speculation, Chris.
That's mostly coming from me.
All wild theories, exactly. But of course, in the meantime, before next week, keep watching, keep listening, and keep surviving.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy those pork chops. They are definitely from a pig. Bye.